Hey peeps, today we're not checking out Hammy nor John Morris. You know what? I don't know who we're checking out. But you might want to put your face palm gear on. Oh, yeah, and get your snacks, 'cause you're gonna need your face palm gear and your snacks. Because today, just like every other day of our fucking lives, young Earth creationists are gonna try to teach us something they know nothing about: our origins. So, yep, you need your facepalm gear and your snacks. Unfortunately, since I don't know who we're dealing with here, I'm just going to say stupidity. Okay, so, stupidity, take it away.
That the earth was fine-tuned for the existence of life is no surprise to creation scientists. The Bible declared this fact thousands of years ago. In Isaiah we read, "For thus says the Lord, who created the heavens, who is God, who formed the earth and made it, who has established it, who did not create it in vain, who formed it to be inhabited." Physicist and Nobel laureate Arno Penzias stated in 1992, "Astronomy leads us to a unique event, a universe which was created out of nothing, one with the very delicate balance needed to provide exactly the right conditions required to permit life, and one which has an underlying, one might say, supernatural plan."
Yep, check the receipt. Just as I thought. I didn't buy any of your bullshit lies.
Oh my fucking God, people. Will you please stop using the fine tuning argument? Not only does it make you look stupid, it also makes you look narcissistic as hell. We've already rebutted this. I've made my main arguments against this in another video, so instead I'm going to just paraphrase Douglas Adams and his puddle in a hole argument. There's this puddle that finds itself in a hole and it says, "Well, this hole was made specifically for me. It fits me just fine." No. What happened was the hole was already there, and when it rained, well, you know how water is. Water, or any liquid really, conforms itself to fit the container it finds itself in, not the other way around. What is so difficult about this, creationists? And would you please stop quote mining? It shows you for the idiotic motherfuckers you really are. All right, so it annoys the hell out of me when you just say Nobel laureate Penzias. So, did some background. Um, Arno Penzias and Robert Woodrow Wilson won the Nobel Prize in 1978 for their discovery of the cosmic microwave background radiation that led to the Big Bang Theory. Wonder why you don't mention that. So some people in my audience are going to be like, what's the CMBR? Well, it's the cosmic microwave background radiation. You see, if the Big Bang Theory were true, that means that everything started in a minuscule little uh, dot, for lack of a better word, and then it expanded. And if that indeed happened, we should find background radiation to this day. And lo and behold, we do find background radiation, and it is called the cosmic microwave background radiation. unique specifications to permit life? I think not. Life evolved here on Earth to accommodate the specifications that Earth has. And you are aware, aren't you, that there have been 5 major extinctions? Oh, wait, I'm sorry. You're a yucker. What am I talking about? You only think there was one major extinction caused by Noah's flood. What the fuck are you thinking? One more thing before I leave this ridiculous topic. Don't you think it a bit odd that if Earth really was fine-tuned for life, then we would be able to live on all of it? There's not really much we can live on. We can live on the land, uh, minus the deserts, and we can't live in Antarctica. Researchers can live there about 3 months out of the year, and that's it. I mean, how is this fine-tuned for life? Pray tell.
The evidence clearly reveals that God has created the universe and the solar system and specifically designed the earth for life. Yet many would rather trust and believe in the Big Bang rather than trust and believe in the God of the Bible. In the next section, we'll examine the possibility of life arising from chemicals spontaneously.
Citation needed. Citation fucking needed.
Evidence? Really? The only quote-unquote evidence you gave us was some made-up bullshit and some quote mining, which, of course, that's the only thing you can do because creation is a bunch of nonsense. And I might as well go ahead and say this. While you people go off jerking on your Bibles, thinking that God is the only answer to anything and everything, the scientists have been running experiments to actually find the answers. And science does find answers. Tell me one good thing that religion has ever done for us. Science has given us vaccines and pesticides and medicine and agriculture. In the next section, he's going to veer off into abiogenesis. To be honest, I don't know much about abiogenesis. I don't even think the experts know much about abiogenesis, but we do have a few clues as to how it can have happened. I'm not sure, but I guess he's going to bring up the Miller-Urey experiment, which all creationists bring up for some reason. Anyway, yeah, creationists, get up to date. The Miller-Urey experiment was done in 1952. That was 70 years ago.
Did chemical evolution on the primordial Earth produce life? According to evolutionary thought, all life, bacteria, fish, plants, animals, and man, originated from chemical compounds. This theory that life arose from non-living chemicals is called spontaneous generation.
One of the fundamental laws of biology is the law of biogenesis, that life comes only from pre-existing life. And of course, for a creationist, that's certainly no surprise. Life, God's life, created life to multiply after its kind. So that makes sense to a creationist. But to an evolutionist, there was a time in the past when there wasn't any life. And so chemicals somehow got together and made living things. And this was often called spontaneous generation.
Oh my fucking God, where do I even start with this? Okay, well, the first thing is when they say chemical evolution, what they really mean is abiogenesis. Chemical evolution is the evolution of organic chemicals. Please study this. This is why you people are an absolute joke to the scientific community. You cannot even be bothered to learn the vocabulary that they have. By the way, I might say they also talk about spontaneous generation. Spontaneous generation goes at least back to Aristotle in the 4th century BCE. And it came about because Aristotle noticed that things like flies came when there was like fresh meat or even rotten meat, and he thought it was spontaneous. I should clarify that Aristotle thought that the meat and the rotten meat were producing the flies and not just gathering the flies together so the flies had something to eat. And of course, that far back in time, it was a forgivable mistake because when the flies would leave the carcass, they would leave their eggs so that maggots would appear on the meat. Louis Pasteur disproved the theory of spontaneous generation by boiling 2 flasks of beef broth. One was exposed to air and the other was not. The one that was exposed to air contained contaminants, while the one not exposed to air did not. Fun fact, Louis Pasteur invented the process of pasteurization, which is just a heating process to make sure that microbial growth does not occur. If you look on the packages of your food, you will find that all of them have been pasteurized. Now wait just a damn minute. Are you really saying that we aren't made of chemicals, that the egg and the sperm are not chemicals? And by the way, the quote unquote evolutionists don't say that. That would be the organic chemists who study abiogenesis. You idiots. So I know this has nothing to do with anything. But you're saying, life comes from life. Well, according to you, your God has life. So your God had to have been created by somebody who has life. Yeah, you just stepped into that trap, buddy. Way to go.
A few years ago, Stanley Miller did a famous experiment. He took some simple materials, some methane, some ammonia, some water vapor, zotzed them with an electric spark to simulate lightning flashing back and forth in the atmosphere of the ancient Earth. And in just a week, he got amino acids, the building blocks of protein. And that was hailed as almost making life in a test tube. And that was one I used when I used to teach evolution. But I took a look at the rest of the evidence. And there are 3 problems with that brilliant experiment. 1, he had the wrong starting materials. 2, he used the wrong conditions. And 3, he got the wrong results. Other than that, it was a brilliant experiment.
The Miller experiment assumed an atmosphere of methane and ammonia, gases that could not have been present in large amounts because the ammonia would be decomposed by ultraviolet light, and methane should be found stuck to ancient sedimentary clays, but is not. Miller also left out oxygen because he knew that oxygen would destroy the very molecules he was trying to produce. But as deep as we dig, we find oxidized rocks, suggesting an oxygen-rich atmosphere.
Until the 1920s, there was not a theoretical model as to how life could have appeared on Earth until Open and Haldane individually came up with a working model as to how inorganic molecules could form organic molecules such as simple sugars and other simple things. In 1953, Miller and Urey tested this hypothesis by making an apparatus which would simulate the open Haldane early Earth atmosphere. Now, it must be said that it has been shown that this atmosphere was incorrect. However, despite this incorrect atmosphere that Miller and Urey used, amino acids were formed. Now, this is something that the young Earth creationists are never going to tell you, that using this atmosphere, Miller and Urey formed amino acids. I wonder why. And while I do advocate rigorous scientific experimentation, I should point out that even though Miller and Urey used the wrong atmosphere, they proved that it could be done. So, what's the problem here? It just seems to me like young earthers and old earthers too, let's face it, are just whining their asses off that it has been proven that it can be done, whether or not he used an incorrect atmosphere or not. That has nothing to do with it. Guess what? It can still be done. And even though it's been admitted that the Miller-Urey experiment used the wrong atmosphere, more up-to-date experiments that have used different atmospheres have found very, very little leeway in the composition of the biotic chemicals they form. In other words, the biochemists that are now working in this field are forming amino acids and sugars with different chemicals in the early Earth atmosphere, so to speak.
The Miller experiment assumed an atmosphere of methane and ammonia, gases that could not have been present in large amounts because the ammonia would be decomposed by ultraviolet light, and methane should be found stuck to ancient sedimentary clays, but is not. Miller also left out oxygen because he knew that oxygen would destroy the very molecules he was trying to produce. But as deep as we dig, we find oxidized rocks, suggesting an oxygen-rich atmosphere.
The Earth did not have a reducing atmosphere, say an atmosphere of methane, ammonia, and hydrogen that was suggested in the Stanley Miller experiment. The Earth never had such an atmosphere. The geology is now clear. There is good evidence that the Earth has always had oxygen in its atmosphere. Now that would absolutely preclude any evolutionary origin of life.
Okay, let's take this one at a time. Methane definitely would be broken down by ultraviolet light, but we're talking about an atmosphere full of water vapor that can block ultraviolet light. Now, let's get to the other. Okay, next up. Most of Earth's crust is recycled, meaning most of it does not go back to the Hadean period. However, there are long-lived crystals called zircons, and these date back almost all the way to the beginning of Earth. Scientists at Rensselaer have found that our early Earth atmosphere was made up of water vapor, carbon dioxide, and sulfur dioxide, which, Gish, you ought to know because you're a biochemist, that sulfur dioxide actually blocks UV better than ozone does. Not only have I caught you in a lie, you lying asshole, but there have been decades since the Miller-Urey experiment has done, and there has been different atmospheres that have been reported to have been the early atmosphere in which life developed. Gish is also lying about the possibility of the abiogenesis of life because zircons can spill out our entire history of Earth. And studying the zircons can give us the oxygen levels in the zircons. It is through studying these zircons that we will actually find out exactly how much oxygen from swampy gas to the water and carbon dioxide atmosphere that we have today as to what the early Earth was composed of. So, what exactly do you do if you have a scientific question and you need a scientific answer? That's a hard one. I need to think a little bit. Oh, yeah, you run a scientific experiment which these idiots have never heard of. So Charles et al. Made lava in the lab, and which made zircons at different oxidation levels, so they could compare those zircons with different oxidation levels to the natural zircons in the earth at different oxidation levels in the crust. This would then answer the question to a certain extent about how much oxygen was in the atmosphere in the early Earth. And this would be the first step to creating a new hypothesis about abiogenesis. The studies confirmed that the oxygen levels were more akin to what we have now, but I am not letting Gish off the hook because he got the right answer, but his work was wrong. In fact, there was no work. The study that I cited, well, one of them was in 2013, so it's pretty recent, and so, these hypotheses, they take time to develop and to test, and we may never know, but we can try to know.
Chemical evolution only weakens when we consider that long chains of specific amino acids, all in exactly the right position, are required to form the proteins of life. Even worse, amino acids do not naturally link up to form proteins, but rather tend to break down.
Now, proteins can be 2,000 or 3,000 amino acids long, very long, complex chemicals. And they're very much like a computer program. Every amino acid has to be in exactly the right position. If one of them is wrong, then the whole protein is useless, just like a computer program.
The improbabilities buried in Darwinism start right at the very beginning. Even before life began, how did the first protein molecule come about? And there's been quite a bit of work done on this to investigate the probability of it, work both by information theory technologists and also by molecular biologists actually tinkering with proteins.
So I'm going to have to do something a little bit weird for this segment of my video. I found a video that explains how amino acids form proteins better than I ever could. And so I don't get a copyright strike, I'm going to have to break up that video. Before we watch that video, though, I would like to point out that even though Miller and Urey got things wrong, they did prove that it could be done, and there are more experiments going on and more things that are proving that it could be done. For instance, one thing that this creationist is leaving out big surprise is that life could have started in deep sea thermal vents, which may not have been oxidized at all.
Even if proteins miraculously formed, we still are not close to producing life. The simplest living cells require thousands of specialized proteins in order to function.
A number of scientists have tried to calculate the probability of life arising by chance. Sir Fred Hoyle, a British mathematician, using a supercomputer and the assistance of graduate students, estimated only the origin of the proteins of an amoeba, 2,000 of them, arising by chance. He estimated that the probability that the proteins of an amoeba could arise by chance is 1 chance in 10 to the 40,000th power.
And it's the side chain that makes the 20 amino acids different from each other. However, what we're concerned about in this lesson is how the different amino acids come together to form protein. So let's stay on that track. We mentioned that some of the amino acids are made by your body, while others come from your diet. Now, we don't really think in terms of eating different amino acids. What we eat is protein, which is found in foods like meat, fish, eggs, and some plant foods such as beans and nuts. Your digestive system takes in these protein-containing foods and breaks them down into the individual amino acids, which are then taken up by your body cells and reassembled into new proteins, much like a builder might demolish a building and then salvage the parts to build a new structure. Inside your cells, the individual amino acids can bond together by forming a peptide bond, which is simply a chemical bond that joins amino acids together.
So I hope you noticed one very important sentence in that segment, in which she says there are 20 amino acids. Some of them are made by our bodies, and some of them we need to get from our diet. And that goes for all animals, not just us. Now, I already talked about the numbers game and how the numbers game really isn't much of something to bother with, because whether or not it's 1 in a trillion, life is still here, which means it's 1 to 1. And you know, Christians, your holy book isn't the only holy book with a creation story in it. And other holy books have very different creation stories. And the indigenous Americans have very different creation stories. So, yes, I would say that creationists, especially young earthers and biblical literalists, are narcissistic idiots who don't think they have anything else to learn because they know it all. Well, guess what? You don't.
That the probability that the proteins of an amoeba could arise by chance is 1 chance in 10 to the 40,000th power.
A probability of 1 chance in 10 to the 40,000th power is absurdly small. To illustrate this, consider the probability of snatching a particular atom out of the entire universe is 1 chance in 10 to the 80th power. After making this calculation, British mathematician Sir Frederick Hoyle stated, "The likelihood of the formation of life from inanimate matter is 1 to a number with 40,000 noughts after it. It is enough to bury Darwin and the whole theory of evolution. There was no primeval soup, neither on this planet nor any other. And if the beginnings of life were not random, they must therefore have been the product of purposeful intelligence."
We can prove mathematically that evolution is just a joke. It couldn't possibly happen. Richard Dawkins, for example, one of the leading evolutionists, in his book, The Blind Watchmaker, he acknowledges that the nucleus of every cell, plant, animal, or human, has a database larger than the 30-volume set of the Encyclopedia Britannica.
Welcome to Creation in the 21st Century. I'm your host, Carl Ball, founder and director of the Creation Evidence Museum in Glen Rose, Texas.
Hey, Carl. Ponies. These are some OG ponies, yo. Back when y'all bronies weren't even old vonies, dog. Bro hoof. Denied.
The theory of evolution is assumed to be factual, is embraced by the academic community worldwide as being a factual analysis of calculation. Let's put it to the test. Let's crunch the numbers and see how well it fares.
Evolution is not a mathematical concept. I seriously doubt that just crunching numbers is going to prove or disprove evolution. But maybe I'm underestimating you. I sure hope you have a serious scientist to help you out, though. It's a Herculean task, and you're not going to be able to do this all by yourself.
You know what? You have lied again. I don't know how many lies I've caught you in, but it's been an awful lot. And you know what the Bible says about liars? All liars shall have their place in hell. Fred Hoyle was not a mathematician. He was an astrophysicist. So now that I've proven that Fred Hoyle was neither a mathematician nor a biochemist working on a biogenesis, I guess I can just dismiss your claims because it makes no sense to take claims seriously for people who don't work in the fields that they're talking about. However, I don't want to commit an ad hominem, so I am going to say this. Just because Fred Hoyle was not a mathematician does not mean he did not do brilliant work in the field of astrophysics. In fact, he came up with nucleosynthesis. And being a creationist, I know that you do not believe in the theory of nucleosynthesis. So why are you quote mining Fred Hoyle on a topic he is not even a master in? Never mind, I figured it out. I forgot. Lying for Jesus is acceptable. Lying for any other purpose is not acceptable, but lying for Jesus is acceptable. Wow, what a double standard.
More specifically, peptide bonds join the carboxyl group of one amino acid with the amino group of another. For example, this amino acid called glycine can bond with this amino acid called alanine to form a dipeptide. The prefix di means two, so it's easy to see that a dipeptide is defined as a compound consisting of two amino acids. Now, amino acids cannot just join together by holding hands. They actually have to give something up in order to live their lives together. In our dipeptide example, we see that glycine gives up an atom of hydrogen and an atom of oxygen, while alanine loses an atom of hydrogen. Together, they release a molecule called H2O, and I bet you recognize that as a water molecule.
Well, guys, this video is getting pretty long, longer than I thought it would be, mainly because I found that video about the amino acids forming proteins, but I'm still going to use it in the next one. So this is going to be a part 1. Stay tuned for part 2. I hope you realize by now that creationists, particularly young earth creationists, are so desperate to keep their sheeple in their little cult so that they can keep money that they will lie through their teeth about anything. In fact, that's why I started Christianity Debunks. My channel originally started as a way of seeing how religion began because that's, what I'm interested in. And I will get back to that. But these Christianity debunks, they're really, really important. If you are a Christian, I hope you can see that your pastors really don't care about you. All they care about is making money. Okay? So do what you want, but go ahead and research Christianity. It's okay. It is not heretical in any way. And I am not trying to lie to you. That's not what I'm trying to do. I'm not trying to deconvert you from Christianity. I'm trying to get the truth out there. If you like what I do, please subscribe, hit the thumbs up, and leave a comment down below as it helps the algorithm. If you like what I do for real, you can become a member for as little as 99 cents a month. You get custom emojis as well as early access to these debunks. I really hope you like this episode, and I poured my heart and soul into it, just like I pour my heart and soul into all of my debunks, because I really want to get the truth out there. That is my goal, and please help me do that. Have a great rest of your day or night whenever you're watching this, and I hope you will stay tuned for part 2, because I have a feeling part 2's gonna be a doozy, because this one certainly was. And by the way, I don't really watch these things before I do these debunks.